And nice to be seen.
For episode 1 of Series 8, The Sewing Bee. We're back into it for the next 10 weeks. And back. Good episode, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was very good, yes.
Nice feel about it. New venue, new presenter, and sort of new beginnings for everyone.
Yeah. And I really, really liked Sarah. I actually really enjoy her as a presenter. I love Jo, but I also now like Sarah as well. So yeah. Very exciting.
She did a good job.
Yeah. And a nice new setting with the background of the wool mill and here being a wool and fabric shop. I found that quite homely for me.
Do you have a friend? Do you have yarn in your shop? Is that what you do?
Yes.
Oh.
Is that not your front room there?
No, I'm at the shop today as we record. So that was nice seeing that. And I just think, for me, that felt a bit more homely. So the whole episode came across as a bit more homely. Did it you?
Well, yeah, I always like that. At the start of any sewing bee, everything's quite nice where they're all settling in and it's all very friendly and people are getting, settled and stuff. It's all quite nice. So,
ultimately, it was the same set, just in a different place. The same basic look was the same. So it was very familiar as well.
Yeah.
It's always difficult in episode 1 because someone has to go home. It's not like Strictly where the first week they can just get comfortable and get rid of those nerves. So it's always hard knowing that we're going to lose someone. And episode 1, 12 sewers, there's a lot to get through. So some sewers, really only little glimpses came up this episode, but we probably got to see 5 or 6 in a little bit of detail, didn't we?
Yes, yeah. So we got to see the likes of Marnie and Mitch. And for one point, I was like, I thought there was more men in the show. And then I was like, oh, there's the rest of them now, because we only see Mitch and Steve for the, a large chunk of the first episode. But yeah, it was good though.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. If I can understand why they do that, because there was a lot going on as it was with the ones that we did see. So
they still managed to get around most of them, though. The people who won and were coming at the bottom had a little bit more time because obviously you have to show the winner and you have to show the person who's going out. But they still got around most of them with their little clips of who they were and where they came from, and that's no mean feat in an hour program when you've got 12 sewers there.
Yeah, and with the little history snippet and with
which we were just talking about in the preview. What do we want to see more of? And we got a nice little bit there, didn't we?
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go into it. So with our 12 sewers, we have 8 ladies and 4 men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same kind of ratio as last season, wasn't it?
It was unusual because they started off by saying, over lockdown, lots of men had taken up sewing, and so I thought there would perhaps be a bit more of an even split with male and female. But the ratio, like you say, is about the same. We normally have 3 or 4 men anyway, so it was nice to know that people had taken up sewing, and I think a lot of people did. Lots of different crafts when you're stuck in the house for 2 years, but I just didn't feel that was then represented by what we had in front of us.
Yeah, maybe it'll be next year. Maybe it's going to take, because lockdown, okay, we had sort of 2 years. Maybe it's going to be like next year we'll have more men, because by then they'll have built their confidence up. It was quite nice though. One thing I did it was nice to see was the slightly older generation, so people who've been sewing for longer on the show again, because we said in the last season that there wasn't very many long-term sewers.
Yeah, lots of newbies.
So that was back again, which was really nice, I thought.
Yeah. So straight in then. We had our first pattern challenge of the season, and it was to make a mini skirt. The patch pockets with the piping.
Yes.
Who's a piping expert here? Anyone?
No.
Well, no, I wouldn't use it because it's just a bit difficult. it highlighted with that, it's a bit difficult to turn a corner on the pocket without getting it all wrinkled up and everything. So yeah, it's a skill in itself trying to actually sew with it. And as we saw, to actually conceal your edges and stuff like that, so it still looks nice and neat. That in itself is a skill.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily they were able to have pre-prepared piping, although I can't remember the name, but whoever, yeah, she made her own, didn't she? But yeah, you know, that saved time for them. But yeah, it's a bit of a pain to turn a corner without it looking wrinkled.
Yeah. I mean, some of them looked fantastic when they were finished. They were lovely. Like I noted, I wrote down Marnie's. I particularly like Marnie's, the red and black one. It was really, really nice. But there was, and I liked Brogan's as well, the color choice there. But
I think the wool helped with that. I think the colors were great with the wool fabrics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and their choices. It was interesting to see what they went, whether they went for a contrasting piping, sort of complementary. So that was nice seeing over the next sort of 10 minutes of them getting to know the machine and getting to know the presenter and chatting. It was a nice challenge there, because what is it? You have to put the pockets on top of your front piece, then put the zip in, and then front to back, and then the facing. So it's quite. Wasn't many steps to this challenge.
No, but as we discovered, like per Steve, everything was new to him. So, you know, for some people, they would never have done that before. And some people really excel. So some of the skirts were just beautifully finished. Yeah. And some were a bit saggy or a bit wonky, or the pockets were, you know, on the, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but then that's when you don't choose contrast piping, because it's very easy to see when they're like that.
I thought even on this sample one, when Esme was saying about pockets being level, did it look like the pockets weren't even level on the sample?
They were very, very slightly off. I thought so
too. Or maybe it's the camera angle, but it certainly looked like.
We'll blame the camera angle. It's fine.
So some of them haven't been sewing long at all. So I think we found out that Mitch and Steve were the ones in particular that had learned during lockdown. And I think was it Christian said he hadn't done anything like this before at all as well with making.
Would you? I mean, why would I make a mini skirt?
I mean, you're not wearing mini skirts out on the weekend.
I mean, I've got one on now, but you know. I bought that one.
So yeah, it's, as I say, there was so much to look at. Any one particular on you said Marnie, you liked that because she had a dark red and black, and then she had that charcoal piping that did stand out. She
picked the black out of that red and black wool fabric really well, and the zip was black and everything. It just showed that she'd got an eye.
Yeah, and I quite like Brogan's olive colored one. That one, I like the color of that one, and I like the color. There was a minty one. I've forgotten who.
Oh, yes, the minty one and white. That was that Annie? Teal. Yes, I put tealy color. Yeah.
I kind of like the look of that one as well. So those were the ones that I was like, oh, I like the colors.
How did you feel the sewers came across then? Did you feel? Like I know Marnie, she actually came across, even though she said she wasn't confident, she actually came across really confident, chatting away, and her skills are coming across. She's one to already watch out for.
Oh, undoubtedly. I think she's one to watch for. I felt really bad for Mitch. You could see him visibly shaking on camera at various points. I was like, I just want to give him a cup of tea and a hug and say, take a breath, it's going to be okay. But bless him.
That's why I was saying, could you... maybe if you were developing the show, just put another week on and have that 1 week where.
Oh my Lord, it would run forever, wouldn't it? Though I mean, it's not a skill base, you know. Like comparing it to. Yeah, but comparing it to Strictly, they're learning a skill that makes them get better week to week. Where 1 week they're making a shirt here, and the next week they're making a dress. It's,
okay. So you're saying because they're coming in with a skill, they've just got to cope with the nerve.
Yeah, they're not learning from scratch. They're in effect signed up because they're supposedly can sew. So,
but if you think about it, so I know Strictly is different. If we flip it on its head, so the likes of Strictly, mostly those are public figures who are used to dealing with public, and they're used to being on shows and that kind of stuff. So we're used to nerves.
Good point.
But they get an extra week, whereas these people are generally at home and sewing and have their time to take and then thrust into this high pressure situation.
But then equally, the Strictly one is voted for by the public, whereas this is not. So, you know, it's not the pressure.
I just want more sewing, okay? So don't take it.
Yes, I could do with 1 week just to allow them to calm a bit and get to know the whole thing of talking to a camera. And Mitch was 12th, Steve was 11th, and Chichi was 10th. And then jump right up to the top end, we had Marnie was 2nd and Angela was 1st. It was a close call between those two, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yes, totally, yeah.
I think Angela pipped it because she did her own piping.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Said that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
Which, you know, was great. And, you know, she deserved the win and everything like that. But I didn't think that it making your own piping out of that blue and white fabric, I think the pattern was too big to make that really any noticeable. I mean, yes, she made the interfacing, you know, out of the same fabric so that there was that link there between the two, but I didn't necessarily think that warranted perhaps, you know.
Yes, but it's the demonstration of a skill and having the ability to do that particular skill in the time that they're given.
Yes,
yeah.
And to pull it off.
Yeah, especially if you are comparing between two who are very close, is that the extra skill that...
Like if she made a mess of it, we would have said, well, you shouldn't have bothered to do that. Why didn't you do the piping? So
well, no, she won, so, you know.
Yeah, that's what it means. So if you flip it, it's like, well, if it had been a balls, she would have...
What was interesting as I watched the episode, it came up a couple of times, was do you read the pattern all first?
Yeah, well, that's because you don't.
Or do you read stage 1, do stage 1, read stage 2, do stage 2? Because Marnie actually said, I'm going to read the whole pattern first before I do anything. And I think Deborah said, no, I'll just read, because I think Patrick actually asked her, and Deborah went, well, no, I'll read stage 1 and then do stage 1. What do you two do?
I read as a
go. We do it
yeah.
the correct way, where you read the whole pattern so you know exactly what you're doing. Otherwise, you cut the sleeve short, for example, on maybe what you're making.
No, because you shouldn't cut the sleeve, because you should have the sleeve from the pattern that you've cut out, for God's sake. Why would you be cutting it short? But I generally, I read through the first few steps and then I'll follow the first few steps. And then otherwise I just get overwhelmed because I'll read it off and I'll be like, I can't do all of that. That's terrible. Oh my God.
It takes me back to the teaching days. And as you do, Ting, you say to the students, you need to read the exam paper for the first 5 minutes at least, and then go and read question 1, because you never know. Question 28 might say skip question 1 to 5.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you're not going to get that in a pattern. Can I just ask, Ting, though, do you make clothes? Do you follow a pattern like that? You follow quilting patterns, so maybe you have to do it different.
I follow recipes and follow that. I still read everything all the way through. How is it different? Why would you not just open a recipe and go, oh, first line is break some eggs, so I break the eggs. Oh, second, I need to do this. Get all your ingredients ready, read it all.
When I read the whole pattern, it's very complex. As a beginner, it's like, oh my God, that's a lot. So,
and I do have to read the whole pattern because somebody has a strop and throw things across the shop when things aren't working properly, and somebody has to step in and sort it out.
But let us
know what you do in the comments. Do you read it all first, or do you read as you go? It'd be good to hear. Right.
What you don't appreciate is I have to learn how to make a shirt after reading it for 5 minutes.
That's when you have to read all the instructions.
Yeah.
Swiftly moving on, transformation challenge. Moving on to something that we know and love. Good to see it back, or not?
I know and love. You pair hate it. Let's be real.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I know it's a bit of fun, but it's also just a complete waste of fabric and material in this day and age where we're talking about sustainability. It's just, you know, to have it just ripped and torn and everything. You can't even do anything with it because it is 90 minutes of frantic sewing. So yeah, and they always, you know, it is only 90 minutes, so it always looks shoddy. Even the best one looks shoddy, because you haven't got the time to finish it.
Yeah.
And as we said, I think, well, last season, the season before, you are asking a completely different skill. from a person, because the transformation challenge does take some different part of the brain to a different sewer who follows a pattern.
Exactly. When you're following a pattern, you've got a flat piece of fabric that you can cut out and do what you want with. When you're presented with a hoodie, you've got to have the skill to turn that into a flat bit of fabric that you can do something with, and people can't see that. You know, it's a bit like I struggle with anagrams. As soon as you tell me what the word is and say, well, that's an anagram, I can't see anything but that word. And it's the same thing. You give me a hoodie, I'm just going to say, well, it's a hoodie. Why would I turn it into anything else?
Yeah. I don't know though. I quite enjoy it, because I suppose, I know you say it's a waste and everything else, and I appreciate that. But there's also the other side where people are actually doing that at home. So there's lots of, and we've said this.
They're not doing any of that at home. What was
no,
produced
but
was
they are
not great.
transforming clothes that they get in secondhand shops because they can't afford to buy material, because they can't necessarily access all these other things, and they need to be able to understand how they can transform clothes that they buy in secondhand shop into something else that they necessarily do want.
But isn't that the issue with this challenge? Is you're not being shown how to do that. If you were being shown how to take something in or transform it slightly, you know, like we've had it before, where you turn a shirt into a dress or something like that, then that is a bit of a skill. Where this is now turned into a challenge where it's just like, pick your 2 tablecloths or your tracksuit or your whatever, and then just cut it up and stick some fringing on. And stick some fringing on and make it look as ridiculous as you can. And if there's a nice big bow on it, Esme will love it.
Yeah, or fringing, we've discovered, or fringing.
Or fringing. This is the season of the fringe, apparently.
And that's how it came across for this one. So it was loungewear, and they had their brief was to turn into glamorous going out, something going out as they.
I mean, the principle was good, because we've all did it over the pandemic. I bought like 3 pairs of those joggers to wear around the house, because why were you going to trust yourself up in all your shirt and trousers and everything? So we know that the principle of the challenge is there. We've now got all these bits and pieces, but I mean, first of all, nearly all of them are jersey, and we know that jersey is an absolute nightmare to work with from start to finish anyway. They weren't using you know, the overlocker or anything, which would have helped with shift and everything like that, which again just takes away from trying to turn something into something useful, because if you did, that's what you would use. You'd be struggling to work with jersey.
And they did say, oh, you can use the habby, so they pushed that, so hence why we got fringing everywhere and bits everywhere. Anything that stood out though? I know there were lots to look at, so we won't go through all 12 of them. Ones that stood out for you.
Ones. I really did burst out laughing. I felt like a bit of Jane Austen who walked onto the screen with like the trail. I think it was Angela did like the train and stuff. And she was like, I can see Beyonce, and I was like, I could see somebody from Pride and Prejudice maybe.
I'd see nobody wearing that, to be honest.
But the style of it, it did make me chuckle. I was like, you know, when you kind of try and chuck everything and just see if something sticks.
But that was the prime example of that, wasn't it? It was like, if you actually stood back and looked at it objectively, you'd go, what the hell have I done?
Yeah.
Where have I ever seen that hanging off the back that low?
But you swing all the way then to Marnie's though, and I said before we started recording, I was like, I'd actually wear that. I quite like that. That was a nice.
It was vaguely more wearable than a lot of the other stuff that was there, because it did have that kind of 80s style to it. Yeah. You know, if you were going to an 80s disco, I could see that, you'd easily be able to pull that off.
Yeah, but it would also just be a normal thing you could wear today, personally. I know you wouldn't, but let's be real, I probably would.
I can't wait to see you walking down the high street looking like that.
I'd be surprised what I used to wear. And then I moved to a small village and people kind of look at you a bit funny. So I thought I better not.
What about Richie and his love for history and historic clothing? He reminds me perhaps of one of the Kent dwellers up here, the reenactors who make their own clothes for the time period they're in. He seemed to be quite comfortable, maybe, or he used his history influences.
He certainly used that to influence that, but I don't know if that then made it not wearable.
Yeah, because he ended up putting a fringe across the chest, and I was like, what is your thinking there?
Well, I think the thinking was I need to cover up the pocket on the front of the hoodie because he didn't take that off. He just basically ruched up the hoodies to create the bagginess at the top, and then realised that the pocket that's normally quite low down was suddenly up here.
I know, but it just made it hideous.
They were all hideous.
Just taking a pair of scissors and cutting off the pocket.
It's the thing, isn't it? It's 90 minutes. I'm just trying to think what, by the time you've really struggled with your brain, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? In that moment where you're freezing, it's actually not long at all, is it? It's probably an hour or so of ripping, cutting, and maybe a bit of sewing. Not much, is it?
No. But it is good fun just seeing everybody panic. For me, I find it hilarious and it's quite fun.
I would really, if I was ever on the bee, not that I ever will be, but if I was, that would be where I just wouldn't be able to. I'd be like you, Ting. I'm looking at this hoodie and I can't think of anything else other than a hoodie.
Just give me a credit card and go and buy what I wanted.
So on that round, Mitch was bottom again. He came across. He was panicking and nerves issues there. Angela was 11th. A lot in the middle. And then our top, Manyi, was second, and Mani was first again. So popping up top.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
you're not wrong.
No, the transformation challenge there. We'll move on to our favourite, isn't it? It's the made to measure. Again, we don't know how much time they've had to practice. We don't know the situation.
Well, they said they'd had time to practice it, so yeah.
So they had to make a dress for any occasion, a wrap dress for any occasion. And I presume they could choose what that occasion would be, if it was a wedding or a birthday party or whatever. What did you think of the dress itself, a wrap dress?
Go on, Ting, have at it.
Well, I had my rant last week. I mean, a wrap dress in itself is very forgiving, especially when it comes to fitting. I mean, you do have to make sure, like they did with these ones, that you get it fitted across the bust because you want it to lay flat. But equally, the whole point of a wrap dress is that you can wrap it round and you can tighten it a bit and loosen it a bit. So there shouldn't have been a problem with fitting. And to be fair, there wasn't. There was a problem with length, I think, on a couple. But in terms of actually fitting it to the model, you didn't have the problems you would have had if you had been making, a proper fully fitted, we've had in the past. Full-on dress, and the fabric is always very floaty with a wrap dress as well, and we got that lovely floatiness and some flounces sewn in as well. So I mean, it is a very forgiving. It's a very good first couple of week task to go with as well. Although we still had some people prove that you can still mess that up.
Oh, absolutely, bless them. But there were some that were just fabulously finished, though, that were just beautiful. Like they sort of did play into would be nice for evening, so Jill's was, it looked simple, but it was just beautifully finished and just really elegant and really nicely fitted. And Deborah,
unfortunately, you couldn't argue with the fact that Steve and Mitch just didn't do very well. And then actually the other 10, like you say, the finish on them, it must have been hard to try and place those in, 1 to 10.
Because some of them
sneezed.
Oh my god!
Yeah, well, some of them it was the fabric. The fabric was absolutely brilliant choices of fabric. A couple of them I considered quite plain and ordinary. But again, as long as you do plain and ordinary, but finish to an absolutely impeccable standard, then that's again what you're doing, is that you're sewing. There was a couple I just felt were a bit boring. I can't say that I wouldn't wear them because obviously I wouldn't wear any of them, but there was a couple of others. There were a couple of others where you did think, oh, they've taken a bit of a risk, or like Christian had sewn. Not only was that fabric really nice, but he'd sewn those flounces in to give that ripple across the fabric a bit more, and that just gave them a bit more body and a bit more shape than perhaps the standard wrap dress that a couple of the others had sewn exceptionally well.
Yeah, it's quite funny, everybody. So based on our chat, we discovered the boys are fan of flounces. I'm not so much. I preferred the simple, beautiful, flowing, clean lines. That's the kind of sort of wrap dress I like. And the boys are like, oh my God, Christians. And I'm like, no, not really. I thought some of the others were. I like his was good, but it wasn't my favorite. So
you just didn't appreciate what Christian managed to make there because he didn't have enough time on the show. We didn't get to see much of him.
No, that's true. But you like, but then you had the likes of Magny and her with that very fine material. And
but that's that you see
the organza. Yeah,
that opens up the whole argument again of like, why do you make it difficult for yourself? Because she in effect had to make 2 wrap dresses because she had to have the thing that went underneath it. And it was just like, as much as you've practiced that, and I know you want to show off, at the same time, you don't want to go out week 1.
No, but she did it. She pulled it off.
But was that the beauty of the wrap dress actually as a first challenge for Made to Measure? Because they had the chance, it was a simple shape, but they had the chance to embellish it, either changing the length of the hem or changing the shoulders. So there was little bits where they could show their individuality. And I think that's why this round just came across so well, because we were like, wow, that's great, that's great, that's great, that's great. And
I really like Richie. He did the split up the sleeve.
Yeah,
wonderful. And they all came across, I felt, all 12, but certainly 10 of them came across as, wow, these are really good sewers. This is lovely stuff.
I tell you, I mean, going back to the way, we always moan about the editing and the judging more than perhaps the individual sewers. But because I felt that those other 10 were really good, I also then felt that we didn't really understand why they were in the order they were in.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the person who was 10th should have come first or anything like that, but, they were really good, exceptionally good. It was, I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved, I think the one that came first, I'm sorry, I can't remember who the name is, but...
Garment of the week was Deborah.
That fabric was just phenomenal. And she'd done exceptionally well to put that black, edge around it. And that, that you can understand that. But what I'm saying is any of those 10, we didn't really understand why they were in the order they were in. There was nothing to say, well, yes, it is really good, but actually your hem's not quite good, or this, it was kind of like, how have you placed these? Because they all looked exceptional.
Yeah, because I really liked Annie's, like her print was just fabulous. That was lovely, really colourful one. That was amazing. I like
African florals, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But very similar to that. We weren't clear on the criteria of this had a better this than this and this.
Well, when it says a wrap dress for any occasion, then a wedding wrap dress is going to look completely different to I don't know where else.
A yachting club.
Yes, exactly. Which is why I think I quite like Jill's. When I saw that, it just looked, and I know they talked about the Duchess of Cambridge and everything, but it just looked so chic, so smooth,
so
and
nicely finished.
Yeah,
but I did really love Deborah's as well. When hers came out, I was like, that's just lovely and clean and just beautifully finished.
Yeah.
So.
But you think 10 dresses that looked so different, though perhaps using the same skills there. And yes, I did. I think when I saw Jill's, I went, oh, I think I said on the text to you lot, I went, oh, I like that. But then you said that, oh no, that didn't do it for me.
It was too.
You like
it's doing a disservice to her and her sewing, but it was just the pattern was too boring. Yeah, I just felt that, like you said, I know it could be for any occasion, and it was a very Duchess of Cambridge, style dress, and we've seen that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's where I was just like, yeah, okay, she's done really well because she's sewn it really well, and we've always said that if you're going to do something simple, do it well, and she did. But I also felt that this was the chance to do something a little bit more flouncy.
Well, and that's the beauty of, as you say, of this. You could have done different sleeves. You could have had your cap sleeves, your puff sleeves, or whatever, or put a frill on, or whatever. And that's probably where the individuality came out. And I think that's what's going to excite us about the next 9 weeks. Is like, wow, that just seems to be a really good bunch of sewers, but a really, the talent there. So it'll be interesting to see how things develop. Obviously, as the Made to Measure went, I we were feeling for Mitch. I think you called it quite early.
Went back through WhatsApp, didn't we? And I called it at, what was it, 11 or 12 minutes past 9. I kind of, in the first 10 minutes, I went, yeah, Mitch is going home. But that wasn't because I took an instant dislike to him. If anything, I wanted him to do really well. But we all know now, especially because this is a Love Productions one, you know, we've seen Sewing Bee, we've seen Bake Off, we've seen all the ones that they do. We know the editing and the way it's done. And literally, you're watching that first 10 minutes and it was just like, yeah, he's been completely set up. We're seeing a lot of him because we're not going to see him after this week.
Yeah.
No.
So I think, didn't you say, Anya, they might be leading us into a false sense of security that it's not him?
Yeah, but that's because she's
they've
too
also
optimistic.
snuck that in the past. Every now and then they sort of do a little twist. But bless him. He tried so hard.
He's fun. He was fun.
He was fun, yeah. And he was someone who started, you know, literally last year or whatever it was. I don't even know if it was that long, but, you know, he was just someone who had thrown himself into it and was giving it a good crack. And you know what? When he's at home and he's not trying to do things in 3 hours to a pattern that he didn't choose, he probably can make really good stuff for him and his family. But, you know, it is that thing of, if you have only been sewing a short while and you go on a show like that where you're then being asked to do things in a certain time limit, you haven't got the skills to fall back on. I think, oh yeah, I've made loads of skirts, shirts, dresses. I know that I need to do this skill, that skill, tuck this, knit that, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I agree. I think he'd be fine at home. And, you know, he has some great ideas. Like, I really wanted his dress to look really nice.
Oh, I know.
But that poor girl, you know, one slip and she could have been flashing the entire world. So
whole world was a gynecologist.
So looking back over episode 1, did you go, oh, I like them, they're going to be my favorite, or I think they might be my favorite? Did you get any sense of that?
No.
Oh,
not yet.
I mean, I think I said this to you since then, but the trouble is we didn't see everyone.
No.
You know, we saw everyone very briefly, and then we saw 4 or 5 people in a little bit more depth. But you know, the Christian's one with that fabric, I thought his fabric on that wrap dress was brilliant, but that was all glossed over along with a couple of the others. You know, they've not slipped through, but clearly they're not going out in the first couple of weeks or so. But yeah, so hopefully maybe after the first 2 or 3 episodes where you've then perhaps had a bit more chance to see everyone, you start to get a bit more of a feel for it. But there was no one who jumped out instantly as like, oh my God, I hope they really win. And there was no one who jumped out either that was kind of like, oh, they're really awful or anything like that. Like we said, they all started off really well.
What about you, Anya?
Same, very much so. I think there's going to be some to watch. I know the likes of Marnie is going to be interesting to watch. And I think Manny is going to be interesting as well, based on her made to measure. I wonder, I'd be interested to see her kind of style. But I also like the look of Richie's kind of, you know, influences as well. So
you say about Marnie though, you got to remember the editing. So you always overlook the editing. Whereas I try to break it down. You see, they could be setting Marnie up for the thing. You know, she comes across, she has 3 or 4 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks of doing really, really well, and then she'll mess up and she'll crash out of it because that 1 week, something, you know, maybe 2 or 3 of the challenges will go horribly wrong.
A bit like Adam last year.
Yeah, a bit like having 6 weeks of really good sewing, and then 1 week will trip her up. So you've got to be careful with the editing no matter what.
Yeah, but no, I'm just looking forward to seeing what they produce. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's going to be a tough one.
They seem very, very proficient for sure. So let's move on to a quick look at next week, Sports Week.
I was going to say, Ting, do you not already have a slipper ready for the fact that they're going to be making?
Well, they're still sat down by the sofa because, of course, this week there was no real cause to send one flying because, unfortunately, I felt the right decision was made. I also feel, and I'm really sorry, Steve, but I think next week I might be able to call it even this early.
From that cut.
You never know. He could actually, maybe it was first week nerves and he settles his
could be. Let's hope so. But if not, this will be the earliest I've called it.
Yeah.
And next week, joining us, we've got Damien from Series 7.
Woohoo!
How exciting is that? We've
Very.
also got Adam planned for week 4 or week 5 too.
No.
So yeah, it's going to be lovely having just another one to join in with the discussion and to carry that conversation.
Well, and maybe then I'll be able to answer some of your questions, because you seem to think that Anya and I know how the sewing bee is run.
We can pretend, all right. I'm making very basic clothing.
I'm in my finished shirt that I've been making.
And can we have a sleeve roll down? Can we just check sleeve length?
We can. And look.
Big reveal.
Oh my God.
Look.
You've got full length sleeves.
Yeah, full length sleeves.
On purpose.
Fits perfectly, doesn't it? And my plackets are in the right place.
Well done.
Well, I could sleep easy tonight.
I'm going to take another one to try and embed those techniques, but doing it in 5 hours, that's definitely not.
No, other things to do with your life.
I have, let me quickly show you this before we go.
Oh.
I think we should provide hold music.
Yeah.
I've got a wrap dress from Sew Over It.
I've seen that on your Instagram. So you are planning on wearing a wrap dress on the weekend?
I am going to make one myself to report back next week. Look at the size.
Is it going to be big enough to fit you?
No, I might. I've chosen. What size have I chosen?
Well, hopefully you've chosen Anya's size, which is a
I was
delicate
gonna
size
say,
4.
give me a wrap dress.
Oh,
Is
okay.
it? Oh,
What
yeah.
size? What size? Size 6 to size 20.
I'm one of those. We'll discuss it later.
Surely, Anya, you're just a delicate size 8, aren't you?
Have you met me?
I've
Yes,
got
from afar.
I've got some lovely poplin cotton. I'm going to sort of chart how I'm making that, and I'll follow the pattern. So I'm not going to go off piste and do some different hems, do some different sleeves or anything. I'm going to follow the pattern because it's nice to then.
Well, when we hang up, I think that both me and the viewers would like you to have a conversation with Anya so that it is actually fitting her, so she can wear it while you wear your shirt.
Oh my God. Right, come on, everyone.
Because let's face it, if you're going to go on the sewing bee, you have to fit to a real model.
You do. Sadly, I can't go on the sewing bee because I have a shop. I'm therefore classed as a professional.
Yes,
well,
but
get me to write them a reference, because I can reassure them that you are certainly not.
We would love your comments, everyone. Let us know your thoughts on the 3 rounds and the sewers in general, the 12 of them, what you thought, and maybe garment of the week. Would you have given it to Deborah, or would you have given it to Jill, or would you have given it to someone else? It's always nice to see what you saw and what you thought. And I'm sure, as I say, normally it's we'll have a slipper rating, but this slipper rating was a 0.
0 out of 2 slippers.
Oh, we're only doing up to, I thought we'd go up to like a 5.
How many feet do you think I've got?
I know, but you could be very angry. You could pick the slipper up again and throw it.
Okay, well, yes, we'll have at a 5. So yes, like you have the Rotten Tomatoes slipper rating for episode 1.
It's a 0 out of 5 from me this week.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next weekend for episode 2 with Damien 2. Thanks. See you all.
Bye.